Jovan Buha! Buha!
Yo, yo, I'm Jovan Buha. I'm a reporter for Buha's Block, and welcome to another live show. Was not planning on going live today until we had some breaking news that LeBron James is going to be out at least 3 to 4 weeks. He will be reevaluated in 3 to 4 weeks with a right sciatica issue, and this is an extension of the nerve irritation in his glute. We finally have some more clarity as to what the specifics are with this injury, but this comes on the heels of JJ Redick saying today at practice that LeBron is on his own timeline, and there seemed to be some frustration behind JJ talking about that. And at the time, we weren't sure what exactly that meant or why there was some level of frustration, but clearly I'm sure JJ knew or had an inkling that this announcement, this medical update was coming from the team and that LeBron was going to have to be out for at least a few weeks. So I was about to do a mailbag, and I'm still going to be doing a mailbag for later today, but wanted to go live and break this all down and talk to you guys about what this means in the short and long term with this group, who's going to start, how long LeBron could be out, and just the impact on the beginning of the Lakers season. Shout out to everybody in the chat. Appreciate you all. Shout out to the late night gang. So let's get into it. So LeBron will be reevaluated in 3 to 4 weeks. And I think this is an important distinction because reevaluated means he will not be returning necessarily in 3 to 4 weeks. And we have an extensive history now with the Lakers and reevaluation periods where that will pass and we won't get an update on a guy, or then it gets kicked to a further date of, well, he'll be reevaluated in 2 weeks, in another 3 to 4 weeks or whatever. I think with LeBron, this is going to be something that's top of mind. It's not the same as like a Kendrick Nunn injury or a Christian Wood injury or some of the other injuries that the Lakers have had that have extended beyond the expected return date. So I think with LeBron, we will be asking a bunch of follow-up questions over the next few weeks and hounding JJ about when he's going to make his season debut. But 3 weeks takes him 3 weeks specifically from now, which is when the update just dropped, would take him to October 30th, which would mean he's going to miss opening night, but he would be missing 5 games in total. And again, that's a reevaluation period. So I'd assume it would be, he would need at least a few days, if not up to a week, to ramp up. And then, so it's probably more like 7 to 8 games on the conservative side. And then 4 weeks takes you to November 6th, which is 9 games. And then again, with the multi-day to week or so ramp up, that probably takes you closer to 11 or 12 games. So tentatively, it's looking like anywhere from 7 to 12 games for LeBron. And this also, though, is in the brief amount of time I had to look at this injury before I went live. Like, this does seem like it's something that can linger a bit, and there's not necessarily a clear solution or remedy or healing process other than just rest. And we'll hopefully get some more clarity from JJ about this on Saturday, which is the Lakers' next practice. But this is something that could linger. And with LeBron about to turn 41, year 23, you just don't know. Like the body heals a little bit differently when you're 40, 41 versus when you're 25 or even 35. So I would expect LeBron to miss, I think they said 3 to 4 weeks. I would expect probably closer to 4 at a minimum, and maybe that extending into, the 5 to even 6 week range. But again, it's very early. So, and he does heal, like he is the Wolverine of the NBA. He heals at an incredible rate and always is beating his timetables. Or, how many times have we seen LeBron sprain his ankle, just tie his shoelaces a little bit tighter and be fine. So if anyone could beat a projected timetable, I will say it is LeBron. I think the question now shifts to what is the immediate impact with this. Obviously, the Lakers are going to have to change the starting lineup. So the whole 5th starter competition and conversation really gets put to the side for the time being. It's now who's the 4th and 5th starter. I think Luka, Austin, and DeAndre Ayton are locks, and now it's more of a competition between Rui, Vando, Marcus Smart, and Jake LaRavia for the final 2 starting spots. I think if I had to peg it right now based on who has started and been available in the preseason games and in practices, who's played on the purple team, I would say it's probably Rui and Vando are the 2 favorites right now to be the 4th and 5th starters. But Marcus Smart has earned rave reviews in 2 of the last 3 practice sessions. I still would contend that, especially in comparison with him and Vando, he's a much better offensive player. So even if Vando specifically is a better backcourt defender, which I think he probably is, you could still make the case from a spacing and shooting perspective. Maybe, we had the conversation for weeks and really months with Smart versus Rui. With no LeBron, Rui makes sense as a clear LeBron replacement in terms of the help defense and the just offensive. Now he becomes the 3rd or 4th option depending on where Ayton is slotted in the pecking order. Like Rui can do a little bit more, and Rui is a more natural LeBron replacement compared to a Smart, compared to a Vando. And I still think then you need that competition more for like who's the stopper on the perimeter between Smart and Vando. I guess you could also go Smart and Vando technically if you wanted to, but I think Rui for the time being will be penciled in as the 4th starter, and then it's really more Smart versus Vando with like an outside chance at Jake, but I think he's probably coming off the bench and not. It's more so to me between Smart and Vando. So certainly affects the Lakers' offense and defense. Like I just mentioned, Rui is a help guy, but LeBron is eons better than him as a help defender overall. I just think Rui is more of an off-ball guy, is probably the best way to go, and then he'll guard some, like if they're playing Minnesota, you'll put him on Randall, etc. But I think the Lakers defense, especially the starting defense, takes a hit right now when looking at the different starting configurations that were realistic. It was always like one perimeter guy, likely Smart or Vando, and then LeBron probably being the 2nd best defender in that lineup, or the 2nd most impactful, like non-Ayton defender in that lineup. Now that changes. And I think going from LeBron to Rui, if that's like the change there, and you still have the perimeter guy in Smart or Vando, I do think the defense takes a hit. Rui is not the same caliber of defender, I think, overall as like an engaged LeBron, but particularly as a help guy. LeBron still can make really high-level rotations, really high-level reads on the defensive end as the low man. And there will be some times where, stretches of games or even games themselves where he kind of mails it in and isn't rotating crisply. But how many times have we seen LeBron contest at the rim, alter shots at the rim, chase down blocks, all that stuff? Like he can still be an impactful defender around there, where I don't think Rui rises quite to that level. So I think the defense is going to take a hit. Now the offense will take a hit as well, but the lineup data actually with Luka and Austin without LeBron, I've talked about this before. I believe it was around like plus 20 points per 100 possessions. So they actually dominated the minutes last season with Austin and Luka on and LeBron off. Very small sample size. So I don't want to extrapolate too much from that, other than I think in general, the Lakers looked better with 2 of those 3 players on the floor rather than all 3 of them for whatever reason. I still think it was a work in progress offensively, but really it was that they actually defended well with Austin and Luka on the floor together, which doesn't really make sense to me, but it worked for whatever reason. So Luka is going to have a lot on his plate. You're going to need MVP level Luka with LeBron out. He's the clear number 1, like no questions asked. Austin now steps up into the number 2 role, which we've seen him do well in before last season. If AD's out, LeBron's out, Luka's out, Austin has plenty of reps stepping up as the number 2 guy. This now puts more, I think, on DeAndre Ayton's plate as a roller and as a guy punishing mismatches, post option, pick and pop option, pick and short roll option. He likes those little middies. And so I think he's another guy who could do a little bit more. Rui, of course, is going to have to step up. And then I think just the collective with the team of Gabe and Marcus stepping up as ball handlers and playmakers, maybe Marcus and Jake stepping up as secondary or third, like tertiary scorers. Like everybody has to do a little bit more. The rebounding is another big thing here, where LeBron is one of their better rebounders. So they are going to miss LeBron's impact for the first, again, 7 to 12-ish games, and it could potentially extend longer. And fortunately for the Lakers, as I've said multiple times, they have a relatively easy schedule to start. So I've highlighted that OKC matchup, which I believe is their 12th game of the season. That's a big game that I would like to see LeBron back for, and just see how the Lakers stack up at full strength against OKC. But I think they can survive without LeBron. This probably does knock off a win or two over the first 10, 12 games. So maybe instead of 8-2, they're 7-3, or maybe instead of 7-3, they're 6-4, something like that. But I think for the most part, we saw last year that they had the stretch without LeBron. I think they're better equipped now with a healthy Vando, still having Rui, now having LaRavia. Like, they have some big forwards who can be innings eaters and soak up some of the usage, soak up some of the minutes. And like, to be clear, they are going to be worse without LeBron. Like, I know some of the lineup data last year was wonky and supported certain things. I don't fully buy that. He is still, by all accounts, at worst, the top 15 player in the league. He was instrumental for the Lakers' success last year, particularly defensively, but still overall, he carried them for multiple stretches. So I know some of the data might suggest certain things. I'm not going to subscribe to that. I think they will be worse on both ends, but I do think they have enough to absorb this in the short term. Obviously, if this is a longer term thing, then I think at some point there's a war of attrition element where certain guys are put in spots and slotted a little bit. Like, already, I think this team has a little bit of an issue of certain guys being slotted a little higher in the pecking order than they should be on like a contender. But now you take out the number 2 guy, Austin moves up, Ayton moves up, Rui moves up, like everybody collectively moves up. And I think they can handle that for like the short term. But if we're talking long term, like the Lakers don't have LeBron, I just don't think that's a serious threat to come out of the West. And I don't think that's a controversial statement. Like, if it's Luka and Austin and then the drop off to Ayton, Rui, Vando, whoever, that's not a team that I think can seriously compete with an OKC, a Denver, potentially a Houston, a Minnesota, etc. So Lakers need LeBron back at some point, is my point. And I think that's an obvious one, but I just have to state it for the record, because I'm sure some people will look at some of the lineup data and really extrapolate that out and be like, well, they're going to be fine without LeBron. I do not buy that. I think they can get by without him for a little bit, but long term, and the sooner the better, they need to get LeBron available and healthy and start building what they hope to build moving forward. And longer term, this is a setback for sure. And this now confirms that, we had already heard that LeBron was likely going to miss the preseason, and it was unclear how much, if at all, he was going to participate in training camp and practices. He's going to miss all of that, obviously. But now I think, like JJ was asked today about this being a missed opportunity with having so many guys being held out and so many guys that they're being cautious with, and just guys in and out of practice, in and out of games. And he said you have to deal with the cards that you're dealt, or that, the hand you're dealt. And he admitted it was a cliche, but he's like, that's just what it is. And like, we're trying to make the best of the situation. So moving forward now, like, the Lakers have to operate, at least for the time being, as a non-LeBron identity, and figuring out what that's going to look like. I think it will be a lot of Luka Ayton pick and roll, Austin Ayton pick and roll. I think you'll have to find some ways to get Rui a bit more involved. I'm sure Ayton will get some more post-ups maybe. That's something that they're trying to figure out. So again, I think they have, especially on the offensive end, they have enough usage and enough talent and skill to make up for not having LeBron. They will miss the playmaking. Although, again, I think between Luka, Austin, and to a lesser extent Smart, they can probably get away with what they have. But it is going to be an impact, in the short term. And it does just confirm, like, this group is not going to get their first reps together until likely like mid-November, which is just an unfortunate start to the season, when, going back to last year, everyone was talking about wanting continuity, wanting reps together, like looking forward to having a summer together, looking forward to have training camp in the preseason. And that's just not happening now. And LeBron is smart enough and great enough, and Luka is smart enough and great enough, and I would even say Austin is smart enough and great enough for those three to figure it out under less than ideal circumstances. But you just can't simulate game reps. You can't simulate practice reps. That's a finite resource. And I think the Lakers are going to be a little bit behind the curve, or potentially a lot behind the curve. That's, once this team fully forms at some point again, likely in mid-November. So I wanted to just hit on that stuff. It's an unfortunate blow for the Lakers. It is a setback. I think it's a minor setback for now, but again, we don't have clarity as to how long this will actually linger for, because the key distinction here that I will reiterate is reevaluated in 3 to 4 weeks, not returning in 3 to 4 weeks. This is something that could linger a bit longer. And again, I think the longer this goes, the worse it is for chemistry, continuity, just starting to build what they want to hopefully be a championship level threat. Then a couple quick notes from practice, and then I'll get into the Q&A here. I am going to keep this one a little shorter, probably closer to 45, 50, because I do have to do a mailbag today. But injury updates, Marcus Smart returned to practice, was a full participant, once again earned rave reviews for his performance, so that was an encouraging development. As I mentioned earlier, JJ said LeBron's on his own timeline. Now we have a better indication of what that timeline is. No other updates on Luka, Gabe, or Adu or Maxey. So it sounds like those guys were all, Gabe close to full participant, Luka, Adu, and Maxey all limited participants. We got clarification on DeAndre Ayton's comments yesterday. JJ clarified that Luka was a full participant in, he said, a couple of practices. I don't know if they had 3, so I don't know if 2 versus 3, not sure. I don't remember if they had said he was a full in all 3 last week, but he said in at least a couple, Luka was a full participant and got reps with DeAndre Ayton. So that goes against what DeAndre Ayton said yesterday. And maybe he meant specifically game reps, that he had not gotten game reps with Luka and LeBron, which is true. But he, based on what JJ had said, based on what other players had said, including Jake LaRavia, Luka had scrimmaged with the group and had specifically scrimmaged with Ayton. So we got clarity on that situation. Luka was a full participant last week. He scrimmaged with Ayton. So maybe the question got lost in translation with Ayton. We were asking him directly about practices and stuff. So that's where I think I get some of the panic with some people of was Luka secretly held out this whole time and we just didn't know? I had that thought for a moment, but I thought it was more so maybe Ayton, even if they scrimmage for a little bit, I guess maybe from his perspective, that's not enough to really count as real reps. I'd love to follow up with him next time he speaks, but we got clarification there that Luka was a participant last week. And then I got clarification from JJ on the line inside the arc. It's actually a defensive thing. So remember, I referenced that yesterday, that someone had texted me that it was actually a defensive thing. So it's a veer line where when the Lakers are in drop and they're doing peel switches, that's the line that or the zone that they want them switching in. So it's more of a marker, like a visual indicator for, okay, we need to switch here. So that's basically a switch area for the Lakers, is that little area, extends on the baseline side, but especially around the free throw arc, that's the zone they want them switching and being cognizant of, this is the area we got to switch in. So I thought it was interesting to get some more perspective on that. But with all that said, let's get into the Q&A here. First one from Connor Phillips. Thank you for the question. 1 + 2 is we see how Luka and AR led roster looks. Yeah. I agree. I think we will ideally in this evaluation of what Luka and Austin look like together, let's just say that's the Lakers plan for next season, right? Let's just say that they want to build around those two. You do have a $50 million player on your books that salary could be allocated to another star, or it could be allocated to multiple starting level or just high level bench pieces that you wouldn't have. So I would say this isn't even the best representation of what that could look like, because if you just swapped out LeBron's salary, because obviously you're missing LeBron, which is a huge piece, and that's almost a quarter or more than a quarter of your team salary is held up with LeBron. So point being, you are seeing those two together, which I think is important, and I think we can learn more about them. my counterpoint is just you're seeing them with like a slightly decimated supporting cast in the context of, I think if you do build around them moving forward, you'll either do so with another star taking up that LeBron slot or with multiple players taking up that LeBron salary. So it isn't like, I think the best representation overall, but I do think there are specific things you could take away with Luka and Austin and how they are working off of each other. How is Austin's catch and shoot? How is Austin running the offense if Luka's doing off-ball actions? What are you doing defensively to minimize some of the downside of playing those two guys together? So I do agree in general. I think that's a good point that you made and a point I wish I had thought of earlier and referenced earlier. But yeah, I think this is another audition, like a higher level audition for Austin to see where he fits next to Luka long term. And if he can step up and carry this as like a low to mid 20s score consistently for like 10 to 15 games and be 6-7 assists and like solid percentages, I think that gives you some more confidence with what that duo could look like longer term and just Austin's place within the Lakers structure moving forward. Easy peasy will be a good chance to test out Vando, Rui at the 4. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of implications with all of this. Thank you for the super chat. There's a lot of implications in terms of, I think most Lakers, with the exception of Luka, are in an audition process to some extent, which is, I think the only player the Lakers have like real ties with is like, I would say Austin is certainly a guy they want to keep and would love to have moving forward. But the only guy that's like locked in, I think, for next season 100% is Luka. Everybody else is, I think there's some guys that are more likely to be here, some guys that are less likely to be here. Again, I think Austin is a guy who is very highly likely to be retained and stay, but everybody else really is under the lens of like, how do you fit with Luka? How do you fit longer term? And with Vando and Rui, if those two end up being the starters or regardless, those two are going to play pivotal roles, whether both start, one of them starts, neither starts. You get a better sense of what does it look like with Rui as the LeBron replacement moving forward? What does it look like with Vando playing a bigger role, maybe as a starter or a higher minutes guy? Like there's a lot of questions that we'll get a better sense of through the first 10, 15 games. All right, I see we got some LeBron infighting in here. M Tags, thank you for the super chat. Who has the best opportunity to benefit from the injuries? I think it's Vando. I think it's Vando. I think Rui also is another beneficiary. I think those are the two primary guys I look at. I think Jake LeBrave, like I think everyone who's in that forward range has an opportunity here to assume a larger role, either as a starter or a bench player or just in general. I think Jake LaRavia also has a big opportunity here. I do think that Rui and Vando are the most direct LeBron replacements and will likely be the starters as things stand. So I think Vando has been the guy to me that's ascended the most in camp based on his performance when we last saw him, really the injuries he's dealt with the last couple of years. I also think the way that JJ viewed him, I think Vando is now changing that perception a bit. So I think Vando is the guy who, based on the way JJ used him last year and the way that he looked last year, going into the season, I was saying he was probably like the eighth-ish man on this team. Now he has a shot, I think, to earn a permanent starting role moving forward, in part because of his own play and just him earning it, but also because of this opening now with LeBron. And it's like, can he outplay Rui? So far, he's outplayed him both of the first preseason games. Can he outplay Smart? Well, Smart's been in and out of camp. He's yet to play in the preseason. He said he's not. Another thing I should have mentioned with Marcus is he said he's taking things day by day with his Achilles tendinopathy, and he's not sure if he's going to play on Sunday, but he does plan to play in at least one preseason game at some point. He's just not clear when that's going to be. So, as I've said, the best availability is being available, or the best ability is availability. And Marcus having this injury uncertainty, I think, also opens up a door for Vando. So I think it's really those two, like that. Maxey, I think opens up the door for Jackson to take the chokehold on the backup center spot. Adu not being there also makes Vando more important because that's just another athletic defender that they don't have access to. So I think things are shaping up for Vando with the LeBron injury, the Smart injury, the Adu injury, even the Kleba injury to an extent, because I think you could potentially see him playing some 4 next to Jackson or next to Ayton in bigger lineups. There's a lot shaking out in Vando's favor, I think. To a lesser extent, Rui, but certainly he's also in that same class of player and just more like positional archetype. I've been a little disappointed with Rui's start to the season, and it feels like he's had a little bit of a relaxed attitude with his role and his performance, and I think he needs to step up in that regard. But I would say Vando's the guy. Matthew Wilson, I think with Braun being out, JJ should try starting Luka, AR, Jake, Rui, Ayton. At least Rui's trade value can possibly rise. With Braun being out, he can play his true position. This is an interesting lineup. I think my concern with this lineup is just the perimeter defense, and I like Jake. I think you kind of have to start Vando or Smart. Like if it was me and I'm factoring in all of the elements here of politics, like how certain players feel about starting or not starting, contracts, all the variables that I think, like I would probably go Smart and Rui. And I think we've had this fifth starter discourse for weeks, if not months. And I think those were the two guys that were often referenced and often considered, and I think you just kind of slot both of those guys in. You got the two-way balance with Smart, and then you keep Rui happy as the starter and as a more like natural LeBron replacement, at least offensively. I think that's the way I would go. I think it's probably going to be Rui and Vando, especially with Smart dealing with the injuries. But with Laravia, it's interesting. Like it does. I think this is probably the best offensive lineup you can create with this potential, these lineup openings. Defensively, I do think there's a gap between Jake and Vando or Smart. Now, again, if Smart's unable to play, then it's just simply between Jake and Vando. But I think I would lean Vando just because of the defense. And for as much as I like Jake and his defense, I don't know you want him as the primary stopper in a starting group. I think there are groups that, especially off the bench, that would make sense for him as the primary guy. But I guess I haven't seen enough from him defensively in the preseason. We still have time to change, at least my mind. We will see with the coaching staff, but I suspect it's going to be Rui and Vando. Alvin, Jovan, would you consider extended BTS during games you attend this season? What do you mean by this? I would love to know what you mean. Like more, because fact of the matter is, like, I switched back to short form vlog content, short form behind the scenes content. I think it's just a more natural fit for that stuff. And also just honestly from a time perspective, like fits my schedule a little bit better. And I'm focusing more on going live, doing podcast episodes, and I only have so much bandwidth. So I decided instead of doing like 5 to 8 minute vlogs, I'm just going to keep it at about 1 minute. And it's just a little bit easier to edit and do the voiceover and all that stuff. So I'm trying to do something that's more sustainable with the vlogging. And for me, a 1 minute vlog is way more sustainable than a 5 minute vlog. And there's a lot that goes into it. And I just wasn't really seeing the ROI in it. So I'm trying to keep it more so on the short form side, but in general, I am trying to put out more short form and more behind the scenes content. So I think I'm going to be doing more than just the vlogging or maybe multiple angles of vlogging. And maybe I got a mailbag question about like, what's it like to cover a game and kind of walking through the process. So maybe that answer, like I'm going to answer it in the mailbag, but I might also do a behind the scenes vlog of like, let's go through step by step what it's like to cover a Lakers home game, what it's like to park there, get there, walking, going through the credential area in security, walking to the media room, going to pregame with JJ, walking around the court, talking to people, coming back to eat, going to the locker room, coming back, then getting set up, then watching the game, then going to talk to JJ again, then go back in the locker room, all that stuff. So, but would love to know what you mean. So you're saying, following up, saying he wants more interactions, experiences. Yeah, I will definitely do my best to do that and do more. And maybe I could do multiple vlogs or videos off of games. It's just a little bit of an easier process to do it in short form rather than like longer vlogs. Creo says, I think we probably have a couple of different starting lineups to start the season with LeBron being out. That's certainly possible. I think from a continuity perspective, it's best to like this really arguably the biggest silver lining in this was to an earlier question. Like you do get to see what this group looks like without LeBron and really the audition process of who fits and who doesn't longer term around Luka and potentially around Luka and Austin. But you also get a chance to carve out a LeBron-less identity this season that I think they've really struggled to, like with the exception of last year. Last year was a weird year with the on-off stuff and the Lakers were better with him off the floor, which just didn't really pass the eye test, but the numbers were what they were. But like previous seasons, remember going back to like the early LeBron AD era and for years, they would die when LeBron was off the floor. Like the offense would crumble. They really struggled when LeBron has always been an on-off monster for basically all of his career. So I think this is a golden opportunity for LA to cultivate some sort of LeBron-less identity. And I think that is probably the biggest silver lining in my opinion. So I make that point to say, I do think it's important to try to establish some level of continuity and player familiarity. And I think like, it's one thing maybe if through the first few games you're shuffling through a couple lineups to try and figure out, like maybe you try a lineup for the first 3 games and you go 1 and 2, the lineup is getting killed and it's like, okay, this lineup isn't working. I'm more okay with the testing or experimenting or changing the lineups if they're not working. But if you have your, like, if it's Rui and Vando and that lineup is being a positive or at least kind of a slight positive or around neutral, and that's the group you feel most comfortable with, I think you should ride that one out. I think they got to be careful with testing out too many lineups. Like obviously during the course of a game in any given night, you test out lineups within the rotation and I'm pro that. But with the starting group, I think ideally you settle on a group for game number 1 and you have that group until LeBron returns, barring any injuries, load management, all that stuff, right? There's always variables that pop up, but and that's another thing. Like they likely will have another lineup because someone will get injured. There'll be some load management, something like that will change. Cole says this unforeseen misfortune gives LA extended time to see if the Luka/AR as the primary wing scoring option, and if it warrants paying AR 35+ million annually. Yeah, I think it's touched on this a little bit earlier, but it's a big opportunity for Austin. I guess actually I might change. I might like Vando is the guy who gets the biggest opportunity, but it might actually be Austin because this really shows not just the Lakers but the rest of the league what Austin can do. Because remember last year LeBron missed I want to say like 8 games during that stretch where he got injured in the Boston game, and I think he missed like I believe 8 if I'm not mistaken, and Austin really stepped up during that stretch. But doing it now potentially to start the season and kind of setting the tone for the season, but also I think likely over a longer period of time. I think 8 games is probably like the most optimistic version here of LeBron's absence. If this is like 12 games, 15 games, 17 games, whatever, and Austin really steps up as the number 2, I think that sends a message to the Lakers, but it also sends a message to the rest of the league. So he might actually be the guy who has the biggest opportunity. BC definitely won't finish top 3 now. Teams seated lower don't win. Poop emoji. Lakers transition emoji. Lakers transition defense emoji, excuse me. Yeah, I mean, I think that this does, like, okay, let's go through. I haven't done this yet, so let's just go through it. Let's look at the Lakers schedule. I did look at how many games LeBron would potentially be missing, but I didn't look at the exact opponents. So let's just pull it up here. I will share my screen in a moment. Here we go. So versus Golden State versus Minnesota, I had already predicted this as a split. I think you are fortunate now if you split those two. I honestly would probably say 0-2 to start. At Sacramento, I think you win that one, still without LeBron. Versus Portland, I think you win that one, still without LeBron. At Minnesota is going to be a really tough game. So I would say 2-3 to start, maybe 3-2 if you split one of those first two. At Memphis, I think is a winnable game. So let's just say for argument's sake, they're 3-3 to start. Then maybe LeBron's coming back around the Miami-Portland games. On the early side, realistically, I think he's going to continue to be out. So home Miami, I think that's a winnable game. At Portland, I think that's a winnable game, though that has been typically a tough place for the Lakers to play just for various reasons through the years. So let's conservatively say 4-4. Home San Antonio, that's going to be a tough one, but I think they can win it. And then they go out on the road, which I think that's ideally the stretch LeBron is back by, is that 5-game road trip, because at Atlanta is going to be a tough one. At OKC, at Milwaukee, that's easily a trip. And then even Charlotte and New Orleans, like I think LaMelo, Zion, like they have some talent where that could be like a 1-4 road trip if the Lakers aren't careful. So I do see them hovering a little bit closer to 500. I think they'll be above 500 to start, depending on how long LeBron is out. But it certainly puts a lot of pressure on Luka and Austin to really carry the offense here. Telly Khalifa, a lot of people calling for Vando to start, which I totally get it, but I don't see how JJ optimizes 2 non-spacers in Ayton and Vando at the same time. This is the point that I've tried to make, and I'm glad you are making it on my behalf to an extent. And this is why I've been skeptical of Vando starting in general. I do think that with the way things are trending in camp and with Smart's unclear availability, the easiest thing, the path of least resistance is probably just starting Rui and Vando together. But I think my pick would be Rui and Smart. And I think in general, I've mentioned this now a couple times, but JJ complimenting Vando after the Golden State game and then immediately transitioning it to his shooting and saying that's the biggest thing. Like, I just think JJ is a guy who values a certain level of spacing and shooting. And I don't think he's going to just look past that for Vando's defense, especially when you have a guy like Smart who profiles as a similar level defender, at least statistically with advanced metrics, and then also is a much, much better shooter, ball handler, playmaker, and scorer for his career. So it's like, again, I've made this point before, but whatever gap, I think Smart and Vando are very close defensively, but even if you want to say there's a gap there and Vando's better, whatever gap exists defensively between those two, the gap is much bigger offensively. It's just, and that's like indisputable. Marcus Smart's a much better offensive player than Vando. So, and a much more proven in conference finals, multiple conference finals games. Like, he's been a starter, he's been a closer, he's been a plus 30 minute a night guy. I just think there's also a level of like experience, and so I would personally go Rui and Marcus. And that might be the way this plays out if Marcus can get healthy consistently and be able to play more in the preseason and kind of get more reps. But for now, based on the available bodies, I do think it's probably Rui Vando. But this is the real concern with this group, because you have two guys who can't really space past I mean, with Vando, it's really at all, but with Ayton, it's like past 16, 18 feet. So that is a major concern with, like if you're running a Luka Ayton pick and roll, whoever is guarding Vando, I'm cheating off of Vando and I am parking myself in the lane with Vando in my eyesight. And I don't trust Vando's mid-range game or 3-point game to make me pay. And he also has not really shown to be a like deep seal post mismatch guy around the basket. So I still think that's like the biggest hurdle for Vando to clear. And I think like JJ's done an amazing job coaching defense. And I think he's coached this team above their real like defensive capabilities, but he still has made a bunch of decisions that have trended more offensively. And I think he does have a certain romanticism with spacing and shooting. And like I made the point before, he would love the 2024 Celtics roster. Like that's his coaching dream of having 5 shooters out there and 5 guys who could switch across multiple positions, if not most of the positional spectrum. So Vando checks the defensive box for sure, but he is the exact opposite of the type of bigs or like wings that the Celtics had, for example. Like he is not a Tatum, he is not a Brown, he's not a Horford, he's not a Porzingis. He's the exact opposite of those guys offensively. So that's where I have some real concerns with like his role through JJ's lens. Because again, we could debate this, we could discuss this. I could have my opinion, you could have your opinion. What matters is what JJ and the coaching staff think. And I just, based on knowing what I know about JJ and observing him and seeing what he did last year, there was just a limit to Vando's role because of the shooting. MTags, thank you for the super chat. Thoughts on making a grading chart for player skills comparable to 2K? This will help us see player strengths and weaknesses. That's a good idea. I know so B-Ball Index has their player grades and that is something that maybe I can incorporate more into my coverage, is showing some of their charts because they break it down at an incredibly high level. But making my own could be some activity or endeavor in my free time. So that I like that idea though. That is good, and it can be something that's consistent that I can reference as I'm talking through some of these guys. Sarah, thank you for the super chat. How's the confidence level of some of these guys playing without LeBron? Feels like he's been a safety blanket to some extent. That's a good question that I don't yet have an answer to, just because this is so fresh and we just got this update 45-ish minutes ago, and we haven't seen a practice post this update. We haven't talked to the players or JJ post this update, but I will say like one of the themes, especially the last couple of days, has been acknowledging that Luka and LeBron have been limited or non-participants in practice and in preseason, and the players expressing optimism that they can figure out a way. It's next man up mentality, and we got to figure out a way to just get by this. And multiple guys have also said that LeBron is smart enough that they don't feel like they need those reps necessarily. Like, of course, in an ideal world, you got the reps, but that LeBron is smart enough to figure it out, and that they know they need to play off of LeBron and be ready to shoot or be ready to cut or whatever. So I think there is like a general optimism. The vibes were a little bit better today. I did feel like yesterday the vibes were really weird. And now with a fuller picture of this whole situation, I wonder if the guys just realized or found out yesterday, maybe yesterday was the update, that LeBron is probably going to be out for a month. And there was just like a weird energy. And they, I guess, had this, maybe the secret that they weren't able to share yet, that this was going to be the start of the season and like it was going to be a bit of a setback. But I don't know. I would say everyone that's spoken about it has sounded confident. It's one thing to say you're confident. It's another thing to play confident and go out and actually do it. I think if we judge the first couple of preseason games, it's been a bit disappointing, but they have a big opportunity on Sunday, especially if most, if not all, of the non-LeBron players play on Sunday. And maybe Thero and Kleba are out, but if Smart's playing, if Vincent's playing, if Luka's playing, and the rest of the group that's been available is playing, we will have a greater sense, I think, of people's roles, where they slot in. and the actual confidence level. So it's a good question that I don't yet have a great answer for, but I would say everyone has preached confidence so far. But again, I think it's more than just like saying it. It's actually, can you go out and show you're confident? Can you go out and play confident? Can you go out and make it happen without LeBron? And we won't have clarity on that until we actually see it. Shabugan, thank you for the super chat. This is why we asked the front office to be aggressive and set up the roster during the offseason as opposed to the 20 to 25 games BS. I'm glad you brought this up because this is now another variable. And I wish I had thought about this earlier. I hadn't thought about like the trade front and this affecting it per se, but if the Lakers get out to, if LeBron misses 20 games and the Lakers are like 11-9 and barely treading water, yeah, I mean, it's hard not to think that has a potential impact on the front office's appetite to improve the roster. Now, I guess it depends how you look at it, right? Because you could go one of two ways. You could go, well, maybe this team isn't worth investing in, and maybe maybe we're so far behind like the top of the West that we're gonna, or they need 20 to 25 games to like evaluate LeBron with the group, and they can't really evaluate the group through the first couple 20. Or first 20. Or I guess you could also flip it and say like, well, maybe because they're behind and because they aren't at the level that they want it to be at, they need to make a move to offset that and to make up the ground. But based on the way they've worked, like they have used the injury excuse or injury justification to not make moves in the past. I do think not having LeBron is obviously a big loss, and I'm not going to dismiss that and be like, well, it doesn't matter or they can't, the evaluation period is just not affected. Like it is affected for sure to some extent. You don't really know how good this team is until LeBron is back. But I would argue like we already knew what the holes in the roster were. We knew what the weaknesses were. I don't think they're very surprising. I think they've already played out in the preseason a bit. And now I think they're probably going to be under a magnifying glass even more. And I maybe this has an unintended consequence of making the Lakers make a move. I think that would be another potential silver lining, but I hope they don't use this as an excuse to be like, well, we need 20 games with LeBron after the first 15 that he missed or whatever, and now we can't evaluate the group until like January. That I think would be a mistaken process. Chris says Luka will get them in the playoffs. Hopefully Braun helps. Yeah, I think I don't think they're not going to be a playoff team, especially with LeBron projected to miss, again, maybe optimistically 8 to 12 games, maybe more conservatively or realistically 10 to 15 games. I think what this does though is this does lower their ceiling a bit, where I think there was a path to the Lakers being, I couldn't see them being a top 2 seed. I could see them repeating as a 3 seed. That to me was their ceiling. Now I think the ceiling probably nudges a little bit lower and is maybe more of a 4 seed, let's say, as a ceiling. And the floor probably goes a little bit lower, where I had them as a top 6 seed locked in. I think there is a path now to them potentially being a 7th seed, which would be hosting a play-in game. Like I just think that the range might have shifted a little bit lower overall in terms of ceiling and floor, but I don't think, as long as LeBron is available for more than half the season and comes back and is fine, I don't think this has a dramatic impact on the Lakers. I think it does. Like, again, I said it'll probably cost them a game or two, maybe more. I don't know. That can impact your standing in this West hierarchy, but I think if LeBron is, whether they're the 6 seed or the 4 seed, if LeBron is healthy in a good place at the end of the season, I think they have a real shot to go on a run. If he's not, then obviously they're in a tough spot. All right, going 5 more minutes here. Shabugan says, love it. Thank you for the super chat. Don't know where we are without Kendrick Nunn. Remember Trevor Ariza? Season doesn't start till Trevor Ariza gets back. This is a great one. Matthew Wilson, considering the half-court defensive struggles the Lakers faced last season and this preseason, do you think Vando, Smart, and Gabe should be used to pressure lead guards full court for stretches in quarters? Yes, I do. I think, and I'm glad you put that order because that is the order I would prioritize it. I think Vando is a guy who has the quick twitch athleticism and burst and just speed to pressure and recover full court in full court situations. I think I have less confidence in Smart and Gabe. I would maybe like those guys to pick up more 2/3 or even half court ish. I think the issue and one of the things that the Lakers are trying to be careful with is over helping, over rotating. And that was an issue at times last year was they would really pack the paint, have this aggressive help. And then the ball is always quicker than the defender if you have the requisite spacing and passing. And then they would sometimes get in the blender and be a step or two behind the offense. So it's a fine line. It's a delicate balance here in terms of pressuring, because if you do get, like, there's a reason why teams don't full court press consistently, like at the college level or at the high school level, because these guys are just such great athletes, such great ball handlers, such great passers, such smart players that it is really hard to full court press for a full game. We saw Indiana dabble with that at times last year, but they also had some incredible athletes from like a speed and endurance perspective that I don't think the Lakers quite have outside of maybe Vando. So Vando's the one guy I'm like, unleash him. He's the pit bull of the roster. Like, unleash Vando, let him wreak havoc, let him cause chaos, let him play his style of defense. Smart and Gabe, I want to be a little bit more conservative with because I don't think they have the same level of athleticism and quickness as Vando, but I am good with them pressuring around the half court mark or 30 to 40 feet range, 30 to 45 feet range. I'm cool with, and those guys hounding. But remember, if you hound and you get beat, all of a sudden now the offense has an advantage 5-on-4. And I don't think the Lakers have the requisite or collective speed and athleticism to play with a disadvantage. I think we've seen that in transition. Like when the Lakers are at a disadvantage in transition, it's layup, it's open three, it's foul, it's teams are getting high percentage looks. So I'm cool with Vando doing it. The other two, I might want to see it a little bit more in the preseason would be nice, and then go from there. Jay says, I don't see Braun coming back before mid-December based on knowing people that have had sciatica. Nerve issues take much longer than things like sprains. It's good perspective. And that was something I said at the top, that I think the reevaluation period here is important on multiple fronts. Like, that does not mean he's returning in 3 to 4 weeks. That means he's confirmed out 3 to 4 weeks, and they're going to let this rest and see how his body handles it for the next 3 to 4 weeks. The Lakers also have a long history of, let's just say, having questionable timetables for guys, and those timetables rarely materializing in accurate ways. I think that's a fair way to depict it. And Braun's also going to be 41. And I think just human biology, people tend to heal. It takes longer to heal at 40 compared to 20. And while LeBron is a cyborg, he is a Terminator, he is Wolverine, he is Deadpool, he is whatever, person you want to compare him to. Like, there just is potentially a limitation here to how, with a nerve issue, you can heal, how quickly you can heal. So yeah, I mean, that's why I'm saying I think it's at least mid-November, but could certainly go past that. And if it goes to mid-December, now we're talking about quickly at the schedule. I mean, we're obviously around potentially past the NBA Cup. We're getting close to Christmas time. We're getting close to his 41st birthday. And now you're talking about a situation where he's missed 25 games, maybe approaching on 30 games. And that's a while. Matthias, do you think there's something else to this injury, like LeBron doing politics or something? No, I don't think so. I think LeBron, I'll say like with LeBron, of course, there's always some level of theatrics and drama that has always been there. And I say this as someone who grew up a LeBron fan before I started covering the NBA, covering LeBron. And so I want to just have that proper perspective of like, I'm not, it's not meant as a slight or whatever. It just is part of what comes with the LeBron experience. But the one thing with him though is he loves basketball and he loves playing and he loves being available. And that's a big point of pride for him. I think that's honestly the most impressive thing with him is like, we could talk about just his basketball IQ, the passing, the consistency, like all these different things, but just the longevity that he's had and really never having a major injury. That is just the craziest thing to me about LeBron and his career. So I think he's someone who prides himself on being available. And I do not think he is purposely holding himself out to send some mess like, you know, oh, you didn't give me a contract extension, so screw you guys, I'm going to miss some time. Like, I don't think he's wired that way. I like, there are some players that we've seen do those types of things. And I just think LeBron cares too much about basketball itself. Like, regardless of whatever's going on with him and the Lakers, like, I'm not going to comment or speculate on that, but regardless of that, in the whole contract situation, I think he wants to be out there and wants to be, and, you know, there's a lot of reasons why. Like, he wants to compete. He's also going to continue to rack up stats and extend his leadership as the all-time leading scorer and you know, make that such a gap that it's going to be really hard for anyone to ever match that. Like, just continue doing things at almost 41, year 23, no one's ever done. Like, he loves that. So I don't see him holding himself out for like, I'll say, you know, maybe there's some element of that in like the preseason training camp, not necessarily having the urgency to start the season when the season was starting, but to actually miss games and to miss potentially how long he might miss. Like, I think this is legit. And I don't question that at all. David Parks, do you think Ayton is catching the ball too far away from the basket and being overused as a pick and roll screener? Maybe have more pick and pops. Yes, I think there is an element of Ayton needs to get better positioning on some of the roles and be more physical and push guys out of the way and get some deep seal post-ups. And I put that partly on him in that regard. You overused as a pick and roll screener, not necessarily, because I think that's the way that the Lakers are going to run their offense. And I think that's what I expected. And that's how I expect things. Like, that's how they used Jackson. And once there was the shift away from AD to Luka, they became a very, very heavy pick and roll team. And that whoever was the center out there was setting a bunch of screens. And I think that's the way that they're going to use Ayton. I would like to see, like, Gabe got him that one pocket pass. With the pick and pops, it's interesting because it's almost more pick and short roll because Ayton's not a 3-point shooter. And even like, he can stretch it to just inside the 3-point line, but he's more of like a 16-ish footer, you know, 12 to 16 feet jumper guy. So it's almost a short roll rather than a like voracious down the lane thundering roll. We have seen him be in some situations where he's catching lobs or whatever, and he needs to get better at finishing those. But I think it's more like pick and short roll. And we saw Gabe hit him first play of the game in Golden State with one of those passes, cashed in the free throw line jumper. And I think that's going to be a steady diet within his shot profile. But I do think the primary way he's going to be used is as a screener and as a roller, but it's just a matter of the short roll versus a deeper roll. And then can they hit him for a lob or a deep post up? Marshawn, in all caps, Jovan, I have sciatica and it's shitty. It's not something that goes away for good. It flares up, gets bad, and you get it under control and feel normal for a little while. But when it flares up, it's bad. Well, first off, I'm sorry that you have that and you have to deal with that. It's good perspective to hear this. And now we have a couple people chiming in with one with direct experience, one with also direct, but knowing people who've had it and like that. I mean, again, I briefly read about it right before because I just wanted to go live because I also am doing a mailbag later today. But yeah, I mean, it's not looking good for again. It seems like it's probably going to be a little bit longer of a injury. Ryan Rich, now with this injury, Dalton is most likely in the rotation. Maybe this will help his value in overall game. That's a really good point. And yeah, because if you slot up everybody we had talked about, I think there was a clear top 9, and the 10th guy was probably going to be whoever was the backup center, which is likely going to be Jackson. Now, if you take out LeBron and slide everybody up one, you have that 10th spot, and most teams go with 10. Lakers went with 9.5, 10 for most of last season. So I think this does open up an opportunity for Dalton. It does open up, I would say, an opportunity for Adu Thero as well, if he can come back relatively soon and start to make an impact. Like, he's an interesting potential rotation player. Could also go a little bit bigger with Maxey and play some more, because Maxey can space the floor. He can theoretically play with Jackson or Ayton. Crane just recently noted on X that Kleber's actually defended more at the 4 than the 5 recently or over the last few years. So that's something to monitor as well with him. But I mean, the answer should be Dalton. Like, let me be clear with this. The answer should be Dalton as the 10th guy, but he's got to go out and earn it. And I think there's enough competition here where if Thero gets right, he's got a skill set that really only Vando can match. And I actually think Thero's a better finisher and like offensive player, or projects to be. So that's something where like he could carve out a role. Kleber's a spacing big who could defend multiple positions. Like, I don't think it's clear cut that Dalton's going to earn that 10th spot. He's got to play better. He's got to go out and earn it. But it should be him in an ideal world. I'm just saying, like, I think there are various ways it could go. But yeah, it's a real opportunity for him if he can lock in. BT Kingsley, thank you for the super chat. With everyone healthy, one of Vando or Smart should be on the court at all times. As for now, AR will quiet all this hate and we get to see our future and what we need. I agree with you. I think there's a couple things with this. I think one, when everyone is healthy, LeBron, Luka, or Austin should be on the floor at all times. Ideally, 2 of those players are on the floor at all times, but at least one at a minimum. And really, the time of that only one's on the floor should probably be like 6 to 8 minutes ish. And ideally the other 40 to 42 is at least 2, if not all 3 on the floor together. The other part of this is I do agree that in an ideal rotation build, Vando or Smart are staggered. And again, I continue to beat the drum for Smart to start, but if it's Vando starting, regardless of who's starting, there should be some love. Like, I would like to see them both get some reps together, and maybe there's some closing lineups or some bench lineups where it makes sense, but you should stagger those 2. And then I think Rui and Jake should be staggered a bit as well. I don't know. I think there's some duplication with those 2 playing together, but that one's of lesser importance or priority to me. I think it's definitely more making sure one of the big 3 is on the floor at all times, if not 2, and then keeping Vando or Smart on the floor at all times, like one of the 2 and staggering that. So I'm in agreement with you, and I agree. I think Austin's going to prove a lot of the doubters wrong and step up the way that he has consistently over the last couple of years when guys have been out. And we are going to get a good sense of the Lakers' future and where things are at with this current group, who fits, who doesn't, and just how good they potentially would be in the future once LeBron either retires or leaves. David Parks asks, updates on the injury report. I hit on this a little bit earlier, so I'll go through it quickly. No changes to anybody other than Marcus Smart, who was a full participant today. So no update on Luka, Gabe, Maxey, or Adu. So 3 of those 4, Gabe was close to a full participant. Luka, Adu, Maxey, all limited participants. All right, I'm going to wrap here. I went a little bit over, as I love to do, but right after this, I'm recording a mailbag. So stay tuned for that to come out at some point tonight. But glad I hopped on here, got to talk through this injury. Just as summary of what we discussed, LeBron will be reevaluated in 3 to 4 weeks. I think that distinction is important because that does not mean he's returning in 3 to 4 weeks. That means he's been ruled out for at least 3 weeks, if not 4, which will keep him out somewhere between 5 to 9 games, not factoring in his ramp up process. So really, I think we're looking at 8 to 12 games here, and it could easily extend, as several of you have noted in the chat. In terms of starters, I think right now my tentative, penciled in starters would be Rui and Vando as the 4th and 5th guys in the starting group. And I think the Lakers have an easy enough schedule to tread water, and with Luka, with Austin, with Ayton and Rui stepping up, with the collective depth, especially at the forward in front court spots, I do think they can withstand this for a bit. But the longer this drags out, I think there will be a war of attrition of certain guys having to do a little bit too much that's unsustainable. And also, I just think that this group is if they're going to hit their ceiling, they need LeBron. That's just the fact of the matter. Is the version of this team that's like a 2 or 3 seed, the version of this team that's winning 50 to 55 games, the version of this team that's going to the conference finals or potentially further, you need LeBron as the number 2 next to Luka. And so whatever gets that version of the team, however long that takes, we don't know yet. That remains to be seen. But that is the summary of today's show. Appreciate you guys for rocking with me. Thank you so much for watching and listening. For those watching on YouTube, please be sure to hit that subscribe button. About 40% of you who watch consistently have not yet subscribed. Would really appreciate it. On the road to 50K before the end of the year. Also be sure to like and comment. And for those listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your podcast platform of choice, please be sure to follow, download, and leave a 5-star review. I'll be back later today, and then again tomorrow. Be on the lookout for that. Shout out to the Late Night Gang.